Well, thank you for all of your questions about our first video, which was about fertilizing mango trees. So covered some fertilizers and amendments. And today's video is all about answering those questions. So, of course, we have Har here, and I have the very difficult task of reading the questions, and then Har gets to answer them. So these are product questions in today's video. So here's the first question. Other than cheap and pricey, how can we be sure a fertilizer is slow release? Is there something on the bag to identify the difference?
Of course. Anyone who produces a slow release product and charges the price that goes with it is going to say on the bag that it's slow release, or controlled release, or coated, or fully coated. Maybe there's some other word too, but those are the main ones. So a cheap fertilizer will usually be fast release. None of the ingredients will be coated. And that kind of fertilizer, such as the 839 sold at Excalibur that we used to sell at the Rare Fruit Council that I helped formulate, it's a good fertilizer, but it has to be used frequently, like every 4 to 6 weeks, from February to November here in South Florida, or the opposite time of year if you're in the southern hemisphere. You put out every 4 to 6 weeks, 10 months of the year. If you have a medium price fertilizer, there will usually be some of the ingredients that are coated. Usually the nitrogen and the potassium and the magnesium may be in a form that's also more slowly released, and not Epsom salts, which is immediate release as soon as it gets water on it. The really expensive fertilizers are fully coated. And so instead of seeing a bunch of pellets of different colors or crystals and intermixed with pellets, you'll see larger pellets all of the same color. And the different brands use different colorants so that their product is recognizable per their brand. So the color can be yellow or tan or blue or green, probably other colors as well. With the fully coated ones, they usually say how many months or how many days it takes for those pellets to dissolve. That calibration of product usually occurs in mid-latitude or northern states of the United States. You should be aware that in climates that are wetter and warmer more of the year, such as southern Florida or southern Texas or Puerto Rico or whatever, that the pellets will dissolve sooner than the amount of days or months listed on the packaging. Of course, the amount of time that it takes for the fertilizer to dissolve depends on the amount of rain or the amount of irrigation that falls on the fertilizer. It also changes the amount that you put out, and of course the frequency. So with a fast release, you have to use small amounts of fertilizer and apply frequently. If you try to skip the frequently part and put out a lot at once, you will be burning the roots and maybe even the leaves of the tree. More is not better, especially when it's fast release fertilizer.
Okay, so our second question is about AZOMITE, and that's not a product that you really have used over the years. It's fairly new to us also. But the question is, how much AZOMITE should we use? Should it be granular form, and the powder form seems to just want to blow away, or can you mix it with something else to prevent this? I hadn't realized, yeah, that I just will interject a quick thing is, that the powder form is really not used in a grove situation. So yeah, it would blow away unless it were mixed in with the soil or wetted instantly, but it is used in hydroponics. I think there's 57 minerals or something in AZOMITE, and I know that you have at least heard of it and have some impressions of the product, so take it away, Har.
That applies to any fertilizer ingredient. We also don't recommend going around spreading sulfur powder. It blows away, it gets in your eyes, gets in your lungs, it irritates any part of your skin that it gets on. It's pretty terrible. But it's so easy to buy sulfur in pellet form and spread it. So Rocket 90 or Tiger 90, those are 90% sulfur and 10% clay. The clay makes it possible to clump the sulfur into pellets and make it hard and almost totally dust-free and non-irritating to you, and also make it a little slower release instead of going in all with the first rain. Also with potassium, you can buy soluble potassium. That's intended to use in spray mixes or in hydroponics. It's not intended to just toss around in the wind. Even gypsum, you can get powdered gypsum that's actually food grade for use in baking and so on. You definitely don't want to get out here in the grove throwing that around in the wind. Even if there's no wind at all and it's dewy, which makes powders a little better working, but it's still going to be a pain to spread. And any powder, even if it's wheat flour, is not good in your lungs. Your lungs are not well adapted to receiving any kind of dust or powder. It accumulates. So of course, back to AZOMITE, the granular form of it is what you would want to spread in a grove if you decide to use it. AZOMITE has many dozens of different elements in there. So as with other things such as seaweed extract that also has a little bit of practically everything in there, you are providing some of everything that you know that benefits plants and some of everything that you suspect may benefit plants but hasn't been proven, and other stuff, including things that you know you don't want much of, but they're there in such small amounts that maybe it's nothing to worry about. I know some persons have been turned off by the notion of using kelp, seaweed extract, because there's a little bit of cadmium, a little bit of mercury, a little bit of lead. Well, any compost you get or any rock dust you get, anything natural is going to have small amounts of things that you would rather not have much of, but it's just part of the natural world. Maybe in the future we'll have some sort of a newfangled purity technology where we can actually get pure ingredients and use only them, but we're not there yet.
Okay, so there's sort of a second part to this question that we just covered with AZOMITE and etc. Is this guy has said, I hadn't realized how much gypsum we should use if we had sandy soil. It seems like a lot.
He's referring to the first video that we did recently that got cut short by a rainstorm. So I had shown the corrective rate and not the normal maintenance rate. So in that video I showed putting a really heavy rate around a tree that had not ever received gypsum before and that had fruits with internal breakdown that proved that there was a calcium deficiency. It's difficult to put down too much gypsum. It's possible, but usually you don't harm plants with gypsum applications. If you were to put down the amount of sulfate of potash, magnesia, or mixed fertilizer that I put out of gypsum in that video, you would definitely be causing harm. You can't do that much of other things, but gypsum is pretty safe. Anything can be overdone, even water and even oxygen, but gypsum is up there with those ingredients as something that most things can take a lot of. Now, what is the maintenance rate? With a poor sandy soil and dealing with mangoes or citrus that use more calcium even than nitrogen, and other plants often use a little more nitrogen than calcium, we want to make sure that the plants are going to have more available calcium than available potassium. We can use the information from a recent soil test and leaf test and well water test and calibrate from that, or we can just simply make sure that we are applying more calcium than we are applying potassium. And so then it comes down to how much potassium is in the product that we are applying. If we're putting out the cheap fast release 839 for fruit trees, there's 9% potassium in there. That's what the 9 means. And so we want to make sure that we put out enough gypsum to be applying at least a little more calcium than potassium. So you have to figure out, how much calcium is in a bag of gypsum, what the percentage is there, and compare it to the elemental potassium and go by that. So I can just tell you up front that if you are going to be putting out a 50-pound bag of 839, you should put out at least a 1/6 of a bag of gypsum, which can last a little longer in the soil than your 839 will, but if you're putting 1/6 of a bag of gypsum out each time you put a full bag of 839, every 4 to 6 weeks, you will, in most cases anyway, be getting enough calcium there during the year to be in a safe ratio, a safe, healthy balance with the potassium. If you put out a lot of potassium where there's not enough calcium, you can cause burning of the plant or other imbalance issues. Now, if you're putting out a palm fertilizer, such as 8212 or the Rare Fruit Council 8312, then you have 12% potassium, and so you're going to need a little more gypsum to go along with that. So you would put out a fourth of a bag, at least a fifth of a bag or a fourth of a bag of gypsum along with a full bag of 8212. If you put out the 0316 that I formulated for the Rare Fruit Council that we used to sell here at Truly Tropical, that is again a little more potassium, so you would go with about a third of a bag of gypsum with a full bag of 0316. Here at Truly Tropical, Ms. Chris is now selling 0322, so even more potassium, and so you would go with about half a bag of gypsum with a full bag of 0322. Same would go for putting out the sulfate of potash magnesia, which is 0022, so half a bag of gypsum with a full bag of the 0022. Sulfate of potash magnesia, or potassium potassium magnesium sulfate, also known as K-Mag.
Okay, and then we have a last quick question on this category. Is iron needed by mango trees?
Mango trees do need iron. It's an important micronutrient. Some other plants need even more iron perhaps, but mangoes need quite a bit. However, mangoes need even more manganese. So most fertilizers have more iron than manganese, but with mangoes it would really be best to have equal amounts of iron and manganese, or even more manganese than iron. And of course we always need zinc and boron and molybdenum and copper in our fertilizers.
Okay, so you have a next little category is sourcing products, and the first question is, for people that are far from you, are there similar products from big box stores that you'd recommend?
Well, the first thing to go to, the easiest thing, is palm fertilizers, especially if those are put out per the formula promoted by the University of Florida. So that is 8212 with 4% magnesium, with the magnesium being in a slow release form, and the nitrogen and potassium also being mostly coated. There can be a little bit of fast release of each of those, but 3/4 or more of the nitrogen and potassium should be coated. In other words, slow release, so that it doesn't all go away after the first rain. They also need to have specified amounts of the iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron, so on.
So this next question is fairly similar, but it's for those who aren't close to your nursery. Can they use mango fertilizer at local big box stores, or what would you recommend? And we did notice, we were looking through some garden centers recently, and there are I think mango avocado fertilizer is one of the products out there, and you know, and possibly mango citrus fertilizer, but I don't recall seeing strictly mango fertilizer. But anyway, out of the products that you're aware of that are commonly available, you've already mentioned palm fertilizer, but might there be any other products?
Well, I've not shopped around lately, so I'm glad you have. Citrus really should be fertilized with a somewhat different fertilizer from mangoes. Citrus needs some boron, but very little, and they are easily damaged by too much boron. So mangoes don't need quite as much boron as palms. So sometimes a mango can be damaged if you put out palm fertilizer heavily.
But are there any other clues you can give people as far as good places to find quality amendments?
Well, there are good places online, such as Seven Springs Farm Supply. I've not shopped around at our local garden centers here, so I really don't know what they're offering. You know, I hear about good places like Uncle Bim's, but I've never been there, so I really don't know what they carry. I've seen one bag of fertilizer from there. It looked pretty good. I don't remember what it was called. There have long been bags at places like Home Depot with pretty pictures of fruits and vegetables. I buy it and put on my vegetable garden, but it never really looked adequate for mangoes. Maybe it would be good for some of the other trees.
Yeah, you mentioned Seven Springs Farm, and they have a whole lot of really nice products there. Unfortunately, they're in Virginia, as I recall, and so the main problem, you know, they use things that are OMRI certified. I mean, where they sell things that are OMRI certified, and so it's wonderful. But the only downside is the freight. And it does cost a bunch in freight, and so every year or so, it probably turns out to be every other year, we will order, and then people who want to order things from the same company can put their order in with ours, and so we all have to have less to pay for freight. So if you are interested in that kind of any of their products, just keep an eye out for announcements for when we might order next, and then it benefits everybody to get a bigger order in. Yeah, that is a great resource for quality products.
As far as sources to get some of the stuff we talk about, if you have a plant company or you have a landscaper who does and can go to a professional supply house, well, then places such as Helena Chemicals or Howard Fertilizers and Chemicals or ProSource One or Nutrien and others, you know, they're all professional supply houses. They will have gypsum if they have any customers who have golf courses, because most golf courses apply gypsum to make the grass blades tougher to being run over by golf carts and stepped on and so on. And it makes other plants in general healthier, just as gypsum makes grass healthier. Some professional supply houses, although they do not advertise to the public, will grudgingly deal with you if you come in already knowing exactly what you want. You know, don't ask the secretaries up front any questions, because they don't know. They only deal with the details of filling orders. and they're also not being paid to educate the public. So don't come in acting like a student or a curious person. Come in knowing exactly what you want, and be willing to wait there an hour or so while they set up an account for you, and then ask someone from the warehouse to bring something up for you or tell you to go around behind to pick it up. So don't be nervous or impatient, and eventually you may be able to get what you want. And don't ask for a price list either, because that's not available. And remember that you probably don't qualify as a wholesale customer, so don't expect a wholesale price. They are able to estimate what you are likely to buy during the year and charge you prices accordingly. So Landscape Site 1 is another professional supply house that deals most readily with retail customers coming in. The local places I've seen have signs by the door only about this big. In other words, not visible from the road. They're not asking you to come in when you don't really belong there, but if you do come in and you're respectful and patient and know what you want, you'll probably get to buy it.
Let's see, we have last subcategory in this general category is alternative products. And first question is, how or why do some backyard growers claim use none? Are they hiding their secret and bring it to their grave, or is it true?
As I mentioned in our fertilizer and amendment video a couple weeks ago, if your tree is already as big as you want it, as green as you want it, as productive as you want it, and good quality flavor and texture in the fruits, you might want to skip a year. No fertilizer at all, or put out just a very small amount to make up for whatever nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus and so on were in the fruits that you sold away from your property, that you didn't return anything under the tree to replace those. So the idea is that you apply a maintenance rate that doesn't increase what would have been available there, but just keeps it the same as when you started out.
Okay, this next question is right up your alley. Well, a lot of them are, but this has HAR written all over it. When I prune my mango trees, can I just chop and drop the leaves and trunks under the trees to return the nutrition back into the soil?
Yes. Preferably, you don't just throw whole bushy branches down and leave them as is. You cut up branches so you have straight pieces of branch and the leaves on there, and you put them down in an organized fashion so you make a new floor like 6 inches or even a foot deep the day you do it. Of course, it'll wilt down in a few weeks, but if you put it down in an organized, neat-looking way that you can walk on without tripping when you're looking up into the tree, that's wonderful food for the tree. Of course, if you have tree surgeon wood chips, preferably with chipped up leaves in there, because leaves have different ingredients than wood chips as far as the ratios, that's also great. Do not pile it against the trunk of the tree. You want to keep your mulch starting a few inches out from the tree trunk, and then preferably have enough to go well beyond the canopy. You need to remember that the first time you put down wood chips, if the soil is non-fertile, if it's poor, and you put down a lot of wood chips, it may be worse for your tree for a few months, because especially for nitrogen, because whatever nitrogen is in the soil before the wood chips will be grabbed up by the bacteria that will be decomposing the wood chips. So either put down some urea or some other nitrogen source the first time that you put down a lot of wood chip mulch, or you put out a regular mixed fertilizer before, and then the heavy application of mulch. And then the next year when you put down more mulch, you won't have to apply any fertilizer with it because the first mulch will have decomposed and be available to the plant, and you just keep applying more before the first amount actually totally disappears. And by having the good bacterial colonies constantly working on mulch as you bring more and more of it, the trees will usually get everything that they need from that if the mulch was not made from trees that were deficient. You know, you don't get elements just from a name. Just because it's mulch doesn't mean it has everything in there that the tree is going to need. If the mulch was made from well-nourished trees, especially from the same species of trees, well then it should be adequate as an ongoing fertilization for your trees without buying further commercial fertilizer.
So we have one more question in this category. They say, I have a couple of unused scrap drywall panels that I might have to throw away. Can I break it up and use it as gypsum?
Yes, I have done that and it worked fine. I only did it once around a large black sapote tree that looked really good but would only give me about half a dozen fruits a year. After I broke up shell rock leftovers around the tree, it became very productive for the next several years, and when the shell rock finished disappearing, I started putting out the granular gypsum that is sold here. Made a huge difference in productivity for black sapote. It makes a big difference also with the growth rate and productivity of canistel and also of mangoes. The productivity and the fruit quality both increase. And with carambolas, I don't know if it really increases the productivity, but the sweetness of the carambolas goes way up after good applications of gypsum.
Well, thank you very much, Har. You answered all sorts of questions that people, wrote in. They commented in our first video on fertilizers and amendments, and so these were all product questions. And hopefully that was helpful to those who had questions or might have questions about it. We do have more videos. We had more questions than just on fertilizer and amendment products. And so watch for those videos. They will be coming out soon.